Well, I guess I'll introduce myself. I'm a program manager at Microsoft, and I work on the Visual Studio and .NET team. I mostly work on Visual Studio productivity tools, including Roslyn, our C# and Visual Basic compiler, and all of the tooling therein. It is all open source, so you can find us on GitHub. I also work a ton with the test experience in Visual Studio. So let's see if I can share my screen. Have that going well. Can you all see code?
Yes.
Excellent. And if I do this, can you all see slides?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Let's roll in. So Visual Studio 2019 productivity. Oh, you can follow me on Twitter at gotheap or shoot me questions or anything like that. I'm good at connecting people. If you have a question that I don't know the answer to, I'm always happy to kind of be a networker. So today I want to talk a little bit about .NET 5. I know you had a .NET 5 talk, a .NET High 5 talk already, but there's just a couple things I can kind of lean into around tooling. A lot of those are performance. We have some amazing new analyzers that kind of shipped differently that are completely attached to .NET 5, and I want to talk about those a little bit. And then it'll just be a long demo of lots of tooling things, dozens and dozens of tooling tips. So some new things are going to be analysis levels that relate to the .NET 5 analyzers. Then lots of code fixes, refactorings, code cleanup, editor config, new windows, better performance improvements for a lot of our windows, better navigation commands, tons of stuff. And then questions. That's what we'll do. Okay, so first off, I mentioned .NET 5 performance. Oh my gosh, we have a post by Stephen Tubb on the .NET blog. It's actually a blog post masquerading, well, sorry, it's a short novel masquerading as a blog post. It is in depth, but he goes through a bunch of really kind of small, even down to like the microsecond and nanosecond improvements in some of the .NET framework libraries and some of the very just fundamental, crucial calls that you're using day in and day out. And we know those little improvements add up, so it's really cool to see all of the benchmarks on those. It is very long. But I grabbed some of the code that he triggers those today, and I wrapped them up in some tests, so we can run that in just a second. Actually, let's run them now. So this is Visual Studio 2019. I hope you recognize it. I'm on 16.8 preview 3.2. I think we released preview 4 yesterday. I wasn't bold enough to update right before a talk. But we can install previews side by side and everything. So if you want to try out preview, you can install it side by side your Visual Studio GA version. Check that out. It's one of my first tips. Okay, so let's look at some of these tests. So first off, we're creating just a summation over an immutable list, and that's 1,000 items long, I guess. We have a regex perf test. This is going and grabbing Romeo and Juliet from Project Gutenberg, so the whole text of the whole book, and it's searching the entire thing with regex for love, Romeo and Juliet. So I kind of took some of these small examples and I repeated them many times. So hopefully the perf difference between frameworks will be huge. We'll see though. I haven't tried it when I'm live streaming. So that's my caveat that I'm not sure the test process will, I don't know, let's see, prioritize all of the threads differently. Okay. So not a perfect benchmark, but a good, an okay-ish demo, I hope. And the last one is JSON serialization. So tons and tons of improvements there, iterating over a large range. So, right now, these tests are part of a test project that I just simply have multi-targeted. So Stephen's post also has a lot of improvements, or shows improvements for the .NET Framework 4.8 in addition, so even bigger improvements, but I can show you improvements just over .NET Core 3.1. So that's like less than a year of difference. We've been able to make some improvements. I'm excited. Okay, so multi-targeted test project. I have those tests opened in the Test Explorer. I have them sorted by target framework. So, cool little tip on the Test Explorer. You can kind of dynamically sort tests as much as you want. I could actually check target framework here so I can rearrange columns actually. Super, super customizable. I told you I work on test tools, so I needed to brag about that. But let's go ahead and change the group by again to be grouping the test by target framework. And then if I just run that really quick, we'll see how the live stream and Perf impact works. So you could already see that 3.1 took a little bit longer, and it looks like, yeah, maybe across the board, maybe I should rerun the regex text. You can see that, yeah, .NET 5 is outperforming 3.1, which is pretty exciting. So even at those incremental small improvements, especially if you think of these at an even bigger scale than what my tests put them at, it's pretty exciting. So yeah, highly recommend Stephen's blog post if you want to dig in more to that. Oh, and some of them are orders of magnitude improvements, which is also very, very cool to see. Okay, so just a couple more things. We definitely leaned into a lot of like ASP.NET Core or web development specific performance improvements. So 30% socket performance improvement over Linux over .NET Core 3.1. I mentioned JSON serialization, 19% improvement. It's crazy. So yeah, serialization of large collections, gRPC server performance, and we actually have the graph that's kind of comparing it with what we can observe with Go, C++, Java 2. So we're up there. It's really good to be part of a platform that's constantly looking at kind of universal benchmarks. We look at tech empower, and yeah, we try to make sure we're following those really closely. We definitely don't want to be yeah, at the bottom of the list or anything like that. So yeah, demo time. So I'm going to hop back into my solution. This project that I'm usually using is mostly open source. I just added the benchmark test like yesterday, but the rest of it is mostly open source. So if you want to go to aka.ms/blazor_memory_game, you can actually follow along and try some of these out. Always like to mention that. Okay, let's hop in. So, oh, the first thing I wanted to talk about is .NET 5 analyzers now that we're doing the whole analyzer thing. So we also have a blog post on this. So let's see. So these ship as part of .NET 5, and they give specific advice on API usage patterns from the APIs themselves. So we used to have analyzers kind of shipping as part of Visual Studio, and they'd come with your tools, but now they're shipping as part of a framework. So you're getting, yeah, feedback on how to use the API, common misuse patterns and everything, and it ships with the API itself, which is pretty cool. So you don't need to download like any extra NuGet packages or anything like that. They'll just appear in your analyzers node. Yeah, under .NET analyzers. So you'll have a lot of new things showing up there. So these are very special because several of them we have known for years, but we could not ship them because if for customers that would that have errors marked as warnings, or sorry, warnings marked as errors, if we ship extra warnings newly, that could cause source breaking changes. So we couldn't do that. So with these new analyzers, we also introduce the concept of analysis levels. So this is the idea where you don't have to view all of the warnings that you could possibly get on your code at once. So we kind of have multiple levels of all of this. And let me show you a bit more about how you can configure these. And then I'll go through what the analyzers, a few of the analyzers actually are. So right now, you can set things to analysis level 5. that'll give you basically the .NET 5 analyzers package. So there's about a dozen that we have now been able to check in because we know we won't cause any source breaking changes for people who have warnings set as errors. You can also use, let's see, I think I have a table. Yeah, so you can also use lower analysis levels that correlate with .NET Core 3.1 or lower, so you won't get any new things, even if you are targeting the .NET SDK. So another great thing about this concept is that you can also target .NET Core 3.1, but set it to analysis level 5. So you can get .NET 5 analyzers in your tooling that are giving you more advanced warnings and errors without actually having to change the target framework of your project. So you can kind of be as advanced as you want to go, or you could dial it down if it's just not something you want to see yet, if you're not ready to go through and kind of look at your code quality. Okay, so let's look at a few of these. So this is warning when an expression is always true or false. And this is specifically for when you're comparing a, for when you're comparing a struct to null, because it'll never be null. Yeah, so this is kind of a common pattern to check if something is true, but it's actually never doing anything. So it's always going to be false. So yeah, there's code fixes, or sorry, so you can suppress this in source or configure severity. So even if this occurs a ton of times in your code, you can always kind of dial it down, set it as a suggestion instead of a warning. And as you can see, if you have a nullable datetime, then you don't get a warning. So we know that's actually might be code that might be helpful. So this is a really good one. When you are throwing exceptions, you don't actually have to rethrow the exception that you caught. So that will actually change the stack information if you do. The best coding pattern is actually just to throw and not include the rethrowing the exception. So that's a fix. That's really important. That probably occurs a ton of places in code out there. So really exciting to see. And this last one, oh, sorry, there's two more. Actually warns about a potential stack overflow. So stack alloc should always go outside of the loop. So it's recognizing that anytime you use stack alloc inside a for loop, it could be bad. So it's giving you a warning. Actually, let's just view that marriage again, or that message again. The potential stack overflow move. I'm sad it's cutting off there. See if we can move that over a bit. Yeah, it should say move stack alloc outside of the loop. Boom. Pretty sweet. And the next one is a warning that you should not use the is pattern when you're comparing a static type. So the operator is or as may not be static. So the right side of is shouldn't be that. So get a warning. And this last one is really interesting because it's also dealing with avoiding unnecessary data copies. So it recognizes that you're doing a read-only span of char, but you're not actually calling as span before you access the range. So that's actually inefficient. To avoid creating extra data copies, you should be using as span. So pretty cool. That one comes with a code fix. And something I wanted to do up here is actually demonstrate how you can change or suppress severity. So you can suppress it with a pragma warning in a suppression file or anything like that. So this is for cases where, say, you're getting this in a ton of places all over your code, and you don't want to be clogging up, I guess, your warnings, especially when you're not sure if they will immediately cause problems during runtime. These are, again, kind of extra features. A lot of these are already present in existing code. We've just never been able to warn about them before, so might be okay if you defer when you look at them. So you can do that really easily by changing the warning to any kind of severity level. So I'm going to change this one to a suggestion. And what it did was actually edit my editor config. So actually, let's go here. So it said warning, now it's a suggestion. And if I go back here, you can see instead of the green squiggle, I'm just getting these 3 dots. So it's kind of a less forceful way that I can still get the same details, but it might not show up in my error list, or at least I can filter out my messages, if it's, less important. So that's a way to kind of control the severity and all of the feedback that your IDE is giving you. If you haven't heard of editor config, it's a super powerful tool for not only configuring analyzers, it actually started as a code style tool. So I want to show you a bit of that. But first, I kind of jumped in. I didn't introduce this app at all. So let's go ahead and introduce this Blazor memory game app. If any of you downloaded it at the beginning, you're probably wondering, what the heck is this? Why are there so many odd things? And so let me go through that really quick. So just kind of launching it. So if you've played memory game, it involves flipping cards, turning them over. You can see it's player's 1 turn. I know I've ran through a lot of my, board games recently, so it's kind of nice to have an extra one around. Oh, let's see, I'm looking for a tiger. Oh, did I miss it? So you can see it's kind of changing turns. So now it's player's two's turn, and I can score. And then since I scored, I get another turn before it's player 1's turn again. So you can kind of play this with whoever, your kids, your friends, your family. And it also has a bunch of cool code working in the background. And it is a Blazor app targeting .NET 5. In order to use it, you do need .NET 5 RC2 installed on your machine. If you want to only use one targeting 3.1, just go back in our Git history and cherry pick the commit before I said add .NET 5, and that'll work. Cool. So that's what the app does. And what I wanted to show was how editor config can control code style. So let me show you one of the newer things that it can do. So we now have the ability to set a file header template from the editor config. This is also really nice because this .editor config file is controlled with your source control. So it's not an IDE only setting that you kind of set once and then need to somehow figure out how to share with your team. It's always at the root of your repo. So your whole team is actually getting the same analyzer configuration and the same code style that you've configured. So it's a great way to share. So let's go ahead and add the file header that I want. So I don't have this set to high severity or anything like that. And I can add it here at the top of my files. I can add it to the whole solution or to the whole document, or I can press code cleanup. And since it's one of the things that I've included in code cleanup to add, you can always configure what fixers you've included in code cleanup here. So it also will sort my usings, remove unnecessary usings. It won't do things like apply implicit, explicit type preferences because I haven't promoted that. So that'll run, on all of the documents that I have open and apply file headers. Pretty cool. And if I wanted to run that on my entire solution, I just need to right-click in the Solution Explorer and run code cleanup. So let's talk a little bit more about tooling and get into some code here. I can make that smaller. So something that I wanted to call out really quickly is Windows key dot. If you're on Windows, we support native keyboard inputs. So this is super helpful if you want to do something with a different character, so like typing trademark or TM. It also has interesting expressions, so I know I use the shrug emoji quite a lot, but it's also super powerful in that it has many different language support. So if you're always looking for a character that you haven't memorized the alt code for, you can find it really easily with that. And Visual Studio and Visual Studio for Mac supports all of this native keyboard input. So shrug. So it's really easy to get that. And in Visual Studio for Mac, they support it with actually a native Cocoa editor UI. Yeah. Oh, and I also forgot, you can also do math symbols, which are very cool. So if you're writing, let's see, where are those? They're there. So if you're writing equations or that degree symbol or something like that in your code and displaying it, you can always use this, which is super helpful. Windows key dot is also helpful just in general for writing. That's just a Windows 10 in general tip. Cool. So something we've had for a while is multi-caret. You can control click and add your caret to multiple places in the editor. Is it control alt click? Did I change it? Oh, control alt click. There we go. So I can add my caret there. Alt drag also adds it to a single line all in that order. And the next matching caret is Shift Alt click or Shift Alt dot. So it will actually recognize all the places throughout the document that contain the same sequence of characters and insert your cursor there. Always super helpful. Maybe something you've known for a long time, but whenever I share it, I usually get one person in the audience going, "What? Why didn't I know this?" So I always like to call it out. Great. So let's look at a couple new things. So we've been talking about .NET 5, and of course that comes with a lot of new language features. One of the refactorings we've added recently is the ability to convert from a switch statement to a switch expression. So that is a bit of a shorter way to write this code. So it eliminated the cases and the returns and made them into sort of the Lambda function syntax and erased a lot of semicolons because it's now all part of kind of a singular statement. So that's kind of a way to introduce new ways to write things, and converting from switch statement to switch expression is just a part of the tool. Pretty sweet. A lot of the action of this app happens in the memory game model. So it's kind of all of my game logic. And there's a couple helpful things hidden throughout here. So another kind of newish C# feature, this is in C# 8, is being able to use the index operator. So I can actually set this as a code style so that I prefer it. But this helps me, more commonly use index. That's the little hat or circumflex character, and that's always saying how many items going from the end of the array. So it's a new way to kind of access or any kind of indice in a list, which is very cool. Something that's I just really like is wrapping and aligning. Let's see. Interesting. There we go. Wrapping and aligning a call chain. So this can put all of your calls in order and just kind of a nice refactoring you can quickly go through. And the last one, this is really special. So this is simplifying a condition. I was thinking a lot about this, and I kind of wish that any kind of text editor could do this. It's amazing that Visual Studio can actually simplify your code and look at it and convert it to something that is actually more succinct and means the same thing and compiles the same way. Could you imagine if your text editor could warn you when you were using like double negatives, like she does not want to run, and just saying she wants to run, like that would be the same meaning. That would be so cool. But this is kind of a way that your editor is now I don't know, moving above and beyond what I guess natural language processors can do. Maybe it's done that for a while, but I just like the comparison. So that's simplifying a conditional. So it's super helpful if you've been coding for a long time and you're not really sure if all of the effort you put into it was is actually still used. So I like that one, because making code simpler and easier to use is always the goal. So a couple more. So this is really common. I'm sure you've seen this. It's using discard. And you can also set the severity of that. If you're getting it everywhere, you can kind of, let's see, is it a state time string? Anyway, so this is a feature that is basically, you should use this anytime you never want to use a variable name. So this is super helpful when you're typing and you've created a variable and you start creating more variables and they all have like name 1, name 2, and you're trying to figure out what names you haven't used. I try to use the letters of the alphabet. Now I have to learn how to not do that again. Because I can use discards if I'm just trying to, yeah, basically write a call and I'm trying to figure out where I'm going. Okay, so something you might have seen before, I want to talk a little bit about completion, is completion for unimported types. So even if I don't have system.text.json serialization, I can, first off, I can see it in my IntelliSense list. And then when I click on it, it actually adds that reference at the top of my document. So it imports it for me and it can scan through my entire list of dependencies and see what I'm missing. We can also, so this is something that's new, sort of along those lines, new in completion, is also being able to show extension methods of even, gotta scroll all the way down, even unimported types as well. So if I don't have systems.collection.immutable at the top of my file, but I'm still getting that in Intellisense completion. So extensions was a huge ask that we had, and we got it in. Very happy about that. So something else you might have noticed as I was typing is the starred suggestions. So this is Intellicode. I think people have kind of heard of this, but I'll give my like 5-second pitch just in case it's totally new. You haven't noticed the start suggestion. So Intellicode is a machine learning model that's been run over 2,000 open source .NET repositories. Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, it does work for many languages. So tons of repositories, all on GitHub, and it recognizes common coding patterns, and it feeds that machine learning model back into the IDE, and it reorganizes the IntelliSense list based on what you are most likely to use in a certain situation. So it does learn from your context. It learns like how you're commonly using strings and what kind of calls you might want in a particular function. It's very cool. Something else that Intellicode is also providing is team completions. So let's say, yeah, this card type is one of the animal cards in my game. So animal card as a type doesn't actually exist out on GitHub very commonly at all. Like there'd be no reason for the machine learning model that's running on everything to actually recognize what are the common patterns I use with this thing, because it's quite unpopular. I mean, it's just my game, it's fine. I don't take it personally. But Intellicode allows me to actually run the machine learning model on my code that I have locally. So it's not uploading anything to the cloud. You have control over the model. You can actually share it through a link with people on your team, so you can train it once, on your code base. So it's very kind of specific. So I use, I guess, is matched and is turned properties on this very often. So it's kind of teaching me what I'll most likely want to use after I type a period, which is very cool. So that's Intellicode and Intellicode team completion models. Pretty cool. So more on completion, we've recently added date, time, and timestamp literal completion in strings. So that's when you're typing any kind of string that we can recognize as a date time, and you can get Intellisense on it. So I opened that using control space. You can also type like a colon, or I think, yeah, if you just start typing inside of the string, it'll be auto-completing for you, and it adds an explanation when you hover over any of these of what they represent and an example. When we shared that on Twitter, it got like hundreds of likes. It was great. People love it. So same thing, same deal, and regex as well, which is probably even more difficult to just know off the top of your head what all of the character combinations are representing. So that's very, very cool. We also have colorization in regex. Actually, I had a good example of that in one of my perf tests. So you can see we have much better, yeah, regex colorization, and we even have some matching. I think it only matches on braces, yeah. But some highlighting inside of the regex strings of what matching braces would look like. And all of the completion I had? Yeah. Okay, one more thing. You might have been noticing, what the heck? What the heck are these? There's little adornments appearing in the calls of my code. So this is a preview feature. It's brand new in 16.8, and you have to turn it on. So it's actually an option. So it's in Tools Options. It's under C# Editor, Advanced, but you can just go up to Control Q or the search, and it's this setting. So display inline parameter hints. So these will insert adornments for all literals, casted literals, object instantiations, before the argument in a function call. So long-standing ask, happy to get it in, but it's in preview. Cool. So a couple tooling things. Hope you've all seen the developer or our integrated terminal. You can actually hook it up to multiple different consoles if you want. So I could be using the command prompt. This is actually super customizable. You can add any kind of like shell location command and integrate it. And you could open it with control backtick, which is actually lovely enough the same keyboard shortcut is in VS Code, so I can kind of transfer my skills between them. Oh, speaking of which, this is just a random tip. If you are trying to transfer sort of your keyboard shortcuts and everything you remember from one IDE to another, we have a ton of default keyboard shortcut settings, including Visual Studio Code and ReSharper, so you don't have to break your muscle memory. If you're ever kind of switching in between anything. We definitely want that to be predictable. So that's super nice. So I'm always using the integrated terminal for something. So start will just pop open my file explorer to the path that I'm using in my solution, which is really nice. I would always be running git status or git bash or something like that in this. But what I can do now is actually run git commands from Visual Studio. So this search bar is kind of Control Q. It's the Visual Studio search. And it is indexing lots more things than it used to be. So not only is it indexing a bunch of git commands, it indexes everything in your windows, so you never have to read through this whole thing if you kind of have an idea of the phrasing that you're looking for, and it indexes a ton of stuff in tools options. So let's see, my example was parameter hints. Forgot what it was. So it kind of pops open C# Advanced, and think it's at the bottom because we added it recently. Or there it is, editor help, display inline parameter hints, and it has that experimental flag. So turn that on if you want. So control Q is really helpful for quickly running Git commands. And speaking of Git, we have a completely new Git experience. So Git changes, that window is kind of replacing Team Explorer. Yay! So it's a much more streamlined workflow, a bit fewer clicks to do lots of common actions, and it has a couple new stuff. So I can actually initialize a repository from here. You can open repositories, manage remotes. I think I need to not have a Git repository open, but that's kind of handy. That was one of the things that had me going back to the Git bash or going back to the command line. So that's pretty nice. I heavily use the changes window, just as I think many people do in the Team Explorer, to actually figure out how many changes you've made and where. So that's nice and streamlined. One thing I want to show off is actually all about the or the Solution Explorer. So let's do that really quick. So I had opened this, and really quick. I think I just wanted to drag and drop a file, but I deleted the file because I was using Git changes a bit too much. Let's see. Plan demo. Just finding another copy of that file. Last presentation I did. I probably deleted it, so I wouldn't get lost in any kind of duplicates. Oh, there we go. Please, please, please. Shoot. Well, I was looking for a playlist file that I had prepared to drag and drop into the file explorer, but I guess I can go ahead and make one up. So let's do Perf playlists. Save. Oh, that's strange. There we go. That's what I wanted to see. That's okay though. So what just happened was I actually saved this playlist to disk, and you can see it showing up in my file explorer, but it's not actually, I can't open it as a solution item. So it's nowhere in my solution. So if I wanted to, which I do, I can actually drag and drop it from the file explorer to the solution explorer. Yay, pretty cool. And I wanted to do that because we made some updates to the playlist. So, oh my gosh, it's already 8:45. Wait, that went by so quickly. Let's see. Yeah, okay, well, I'll wrap up on my playlist. So these are really cool. So we have a set of dynamic playlists now that can actually organize your tests based on sort of their grouping instead of by their actual test name. So we used to have something that would kind of list all tests individually. So if I uncheck that, you can see it goes and grabs all of the test names that exactly match this qualified name. With playlists, with the new dynamic playlists, I can actually check any test within this project, and it'll go and find that. And what's most helpful about this, why it was a huge feature ask, is because people were constantly like adding tests to a trait or a class or a project, and they wanted them to be automatically included in all of the playlists that they had kind of said, this is my integration test playlist, etc. So that's one of our newer features. All right, so I had a few more things to show. Just a couple of navigation commands. Control Q. when I go to MGM, you can see Control Q also has code search and camel case code search, much like Control C. So it's kind of unifying all of the places you can search for code or commands or etc. in Visual Studio. That's pretty nice. You might have noticed we have better XML comments and styles. So if I hover over here, you can see I can actually have clickable links, yay, inside of XML comments and bolding and lists, italics, all that kind of thing. All of that's new. Cool. So I guess I'll wrap up. Do we have time for Q&A? I might have gone a little bit long.
Yes, we do have time. We have all the time in the world. And by the way, brilliant presentation. I love the way you did it. It's obvious that you love the product and you love what you do. I love your kind conversation with Visual Studio. I mean, you were part of the same story. It was a conversation, and thank you for that. I see that Dino is preparing to say something. I think now he's even more impressed with the product.
No, well, I'm not sure if I'm even more impressed with the product, but I was impressed to see I think it was the first or the second slide that Kendra presented the name of an old friend of mine, Stephen Tubb, which is, by the way, the same guy that I mentioned yesterday in my talk. So I'm pleasantly surprised to see that this guy is having a great exposure, as well deserved.
Oh, it's incredible, yeah.
Yeah, if you may remember then in Florin yesterday, my talk, I said at some point that I've run into a 3 days long post from Stephen Tubb, and it's exactly exactly the performance post that Kendra showed at the beginning, and that's just amazing. So say hi to Stephen when you have a chance to talk to him from me. We had a long time ago, but we had many ways to interact. So now, yes, the thing about the framework in itself that astonishes me is, and that makes sense, is that in essence, what was the foundation of the framework 20 years ago when it was first released is stayed nearly the same, or only touched in small quantities and in very specific places for 20 years. Even the parentheses, the first parenthesis of .NET Core didn't actually change much of the foundation of the framework itself, and this is precisely what has been done now, because when I read, and again, the post, which I invite everyone to try to read, because it takes 3 days to read it carefully and thoroughly, from Stephen, when I read that they made changes even in the internals of the char class, I'm shocked. I mean, in the sense that, wow, we are really talking about the atoms, not even the molecules, just the atoms of the .NET framework. And another aspect of .NET 5 that I believe I emphasized yesterday, but again, it brings back to mind, this brings back to mind now, is that I see things like a circle that closes, a circle that in a way opened 20 years ago with the first release, which I witnessed personally of the .NET framework when I was younger, and the fundamental structure, the composition, the building blocks, where one module for the web, one module for the database, one module for the UI. Windows Forms in the beginning, at the end, at the time, one module for this, one module for that, languages, tools, and then over the years we assisted to the explosion of frameworks and sub-frameworks and different flavors of another framework, bringing confusion. Now it's again everything crystal clear. We have one module, and that's the framework, well done from scratch. Then we have one module for the web, one module for the database, one module for this, one module for that, and that's it, period. In 20 years, we will be back again to celebrate the mess that it was in the past 20 years, which begin now. So, well, that's it's very, very well done job on Visual Studio, and about, I would say even more on the framework itself.
Thank you. Yeah, it's always a beautiful tension of innovation versus stability and reliability, and kind of being where customers expect you to be, and also just still needing
dark
to
cave.
yeah, still needing to stay agile and everything. So it's a really, really interesting thing to work on. I'm really thankful.
Yeah, and probably like said, that's probably how the process is. So you do something, and then you go into different ramifications, try different things, and then you consolidate.
Yeah, it's in the normal flow of things. Yeah, it's the normal flow of things. We have just to cope and survive those things, try to handle them the best we can. But yeah, it's part of life.
But speaking of the process, I have the question for Kendra, because I was, I listened carefully about let's say, the quick run through the different improvements, and I particularly like the regex one, because it's any help figuring out what those things do is welcome. I read yours after a while, let alone other people's regular expressions. But then, what is the process that you use behind these improvements, or something that you discuss or envision yourselves, then you get feedback? How do you reach this point?
Yeah, so actually Dino mentioned earlier, there's bugs in Visual Studio. I know, there's thousands of them. And that's what I spend my time reading through a lot of days. So I work on the Roslyn repo. It's open source. We have over, I think, 5,000 open issues. That's just what happens when millions of developers are using your tools, and they have awesome, awesome feedback in so many ways. So a lot of what you saw just now was first opened on GitHub as an issue, or through Visual Studio, through our developer community feedback. There's just a little button you can hit, and you can send a message. Basically, to me, it's triaged and everything, but if it's anything on the test experience, or a lot of .NET tooling, I will look at, along with my co-PM Mika, who's also working in the productivity space. So a lot of it came from there. Regex, in particular, was a community ask for a bit, and one of our contributors got trapped in an airport, and now we have regex completion. So we worked on it the entire time he was there. He didn't really have, I think, a great internet connection. So yeah, he just could kind of sit down and focus and work, which was pretty amazing. A ton of what I showed is community contributions as well.
Looks like all the good things show up in an airport or airplane.
Yeah, good things happen.
What do we do now at the airport?
Right, productivity has really gone down because we haven't trapped people in odd locations and hotel rooms and whatnot for conferences and all that. But
all right, so yeah, I think basically this brings us to the end of our today episode, and yeah, I found it very exciting. I hope everybody watching did as well. And yeah, thank you very much, Kendra. But yeah,
yeah, look at that audience; they're so engaged. Thank you for having me.
It was great, and yeah, we'll definitely reach out next time. So not only for I don't know, ideas or for productivity improvements, but also for having you with us to share these things again.